Welcome to Hockey Nights in Vegas, episode 66, brought to you as always by the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com, your home for everything Las Vegas. If you need to know where to eat, where to gamble, where to shop, which strip club is the hottest strip club in town, go to www.lasvegasadvisor.com for all of that good info. And by my good friend Dr. John Pierce at agelessforever.net, www.agelessforever.net. Dr. Pierce is my guy, and a little later this episode, I'm going to tell you about the incredible journey that I have been on with Dr. Pierce, and I'm going to give you a staggering number for you to think about, to consider going to see my good friend Dr. Pierce at agelessforever.net. I am joined, as always, by Chris Chapman of Fox Sports Las Vegas. Chris, it is 40 games in. We're going to cheat by one game and do the Vegas Golden Knight report card episode today. But before we do that, we have a hot take in the NHL news. Kevin Bieksa, former NHL player, current studio analyst for TSN, that's Hockey Night in Canada for all you old people who don't really know, and probably the most respected television commentary for the sport of hockey that there is. Kevin Bieksa nuked Nick Cousins. He played with Nick Cousins, but Nick Cousins, and you and I, Chris, have talked about it a little bit before, he's a dirty player. But besides being a dirty player, he's a bit of a pussy. He likes to start things and then just kind of hide in the scrum, and he never really gets paid for his dirty hits. Well, Bieksa has finally had enough. And on Saturday night's broadcast, he let Nick Cousins have it, both barrels. He went completely outside the sort of borders of commentary and criticism that broadcasters sort of fit themselves into. He showed a couple of dirty hits that Nick Cousins has laid on people, and he made a couple of really important points. The first important point that he made is Nick Cousins hasn't been disciplined by the league for any of these dirty hits. The second most important point is the people who retaliated, the people who stuck up for their teammates after Nick Cousins kneed somebody to the back of the head and went face first into the boards and all of his other offenses. The people who have retaliated have been the ones who have been disciplined by the league. And he smashed the Department of Player Safety, which has come under an awful lot of scrutiny this year for their very uneven suspensions and fines and stick swingings and all the other stuff. But that's too far in the weeds. I want to talk about Kevin Bieksa. He flat out called Nick Cousins a fucking rat. And he said he starts all the shit, and then you can find him turtled up like a pussy in the bottom of the scrum. Now, he didn't say pussy on the air. I'm adding that for color, as I often do during episodes. But what do you think? Former NHL player, friends with a guy who was suspended a whole bunch of times by the league, Rafi Torres, actually played with Nick Cousins. Nick Cousins was a Golden Knight, I think, for half a year or a few games or something like that. Says players love playing with him, but he nuked him, dude. He flat out called him a rat on Canadian national TV. What do you think of Nick Cousins? But more importantly, what do you think of Kevin Bieksa loading up the shotgun and going both barrels?
Well, there's a lot to unwrap. I'll start with the DPS, Department of Player Safety, and when they punish guys, generally you're seeing 2 or 4 game suspensions. When they're fined, it's at the maximum, which is $5,000. Now, $5,000 is a lot of money to someone like you or me, but to an NHL player on a guaranteed contract, $5,000 is a drop in the bucket. So I think there's something there. And I know that it would have to be negotiated by the NHLPA, but I don't understand why the NHLPA refuses to push for harsher suspensions. You know, I understand you don't want your players getting suspended, but you also don't want your players getting their brains scrambled on the ice. You also don't want a situation like you have in the NFL where lots of players, and some notable ones like Junior Seau come to mind, or Dave Dorson, where these guys suffer so many concussions and suffer from so much CTE that they end up killing themselves. You don't want that. So I understand it's a delicate balance with the NHLPA, but I think the forefront of it needs to be you need to come to a conclusion where you're protecting the players on the ice. I don't care about the fines if you're the NHLPA. You should not care about that. Your ultimate number one goal should be protecting your players, the players who are part of the NHLPA. And maybe in this next bargaining agreement, we will get to a situation where the fines go up, the suspensions are harsher. But Eddie, quite frankly, the hits that Nick Cousins, the one that he put on, I can't remember the kid's name from Arizona. It's Valley something. It's a bullshit hit.
Brutal.
It's a fucking bullshit hit. And Jason Zucker, who is someone that I know a little bit. I've had him on our Fox Sports Las Vegas show. I've interviewed him at the NHL Awards. He is generally highly regarded as one of the best human beings in the NHL. Him and his wife run this great charity, and he's been acknowledged by the Minnesota Wild, acknowledged by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and I'm sure he'll be acknowledged by the Arizona Coyotes for his tremendous charitable work away from the ice. But his retaliatory hit, was also bullshit. Now, I understand he's the only one who got punished, which is wrong. The hit that Nick Cousins had on Eric Goodbranson, again, was a bullshit hit. But Goodbranson, he waited. He waited and bided his time to get Nick Cousins, and we saw what Nick Cousins did. He ducked, he turtled, like Bieksa said. Look, I think at some point, if you're the Florida Panthers, you've got to get tired of the distraction. You have to be tired of the bullshit. And look, I grew up in an era, as did you, when there were a lot of hits. I grew up a big Scott Stevens fan. I grew up a Devils fan, so of course I love Scott Stevens. But looking back at some of the hits that Scott Stevens leveled specifically on guys like Eric Lindros and Paul Kariya, in today's game, they'd have no place. And I think the hits that Nick Cousins is putting on people, they're not clean, open ice hits. They're bullshit, coward hits when a guy's not looking at you, when a guy's in the corner, when a guy's in a vulnerable position. And that's my issue with this. It's hitting guys when they're vulnerable. And for the league to not discipline him at all for these multiple occasions,
it's
it's
fucking
bullshit
joke.
too. It's a joke. And, I'm glad you highlighted that Bieksa is friends with Raffi Torres, who has a reputation, or I should say had a reputation. But again, it was a different time, and that's not excusing what Raffi Torres did, because he certainly was punished for the bullshit that he did.
Multiple times, 6 or 7 suspensions.
Yeah, lots of games missed by Raffi Torres. But I think we can all agree that in 2024, what we're seeing from Nick Cousins is just not acceptable. It's just not something that the NHL should be okay with at this juncture of where we are in history, where we are in the sport. I don't like the hits, and more specifically, what I don't like is that he's not answering the bell for these hits. Zucker smashed him face first into the boards, and I think a lot of people probably cheered. I'm not one of them, because I'm not gonna condone what Zucker did, but Zucker stood up for his teammate, and I think that's what we would all want our teammate to do. Like if that happened, I don't know, hypothetically, if that happens to one of the Golden Knights, I would hope that Nick Hague or Keegan Colasar or William Carrier or Braden McNabb retaliated as well. The problem is when guys like Nick Cousins are, and I know there's others in the league, but Nick Cousins is the one that we're talking about right now. When guys like that skate away without answering the bell, without being punished by the by the Department of Player Safety, it sets a bad precedent. And the bad precedent leads to injuries and serious issues on the ice because guys are going to police the game themselves. And
Exactly.
at some point, Nick Cousins is going to do something vile to the wrong player, and they're going to get up and we're going to have a situation where they probably beat the shit out of him with a stick, whether he's down on the ice or not. And that would be the last thing the league wants. So it's a situation where someone needs to come to Nick. And look, he's a guy who I think I've only had one conversation with the entire time that he was in Vegas because he was here during the COVID time. And he got here at the trade deadline. And I think we were able to conversate with him once. But so I don't know him. I don't know him very well. But someone needs to come to him and have an intervention with him.
Paul Maurice is the one who comes to mind.
Well, I'm not even talking about someone within the Panthers organization. I'm talking about someone higher up the food chain, whether it's the owner of the Panthers, whether it's someone high up in the league. They need to set him straight because he's either going to seriously hurt someone else or he's going to find himself in a situation where he's seriously hurt and maybe unable to provide for his family. I don't think anybody wants either of those things. And look, players are human. They're not robots. These guys all go home at the end of the night. We see them when we leave the rink. We see these guys walking out with their wives or their girlfriends and their kids. I don't ever want to see a situation where a player is unable to walk out of the rink with his wife or kids because he was the victim of a bullshit, dirty hit. I just think we all can agree that that's something that is unacceptable in this league. And it's something that the league needs to get a hold of, Eddie, because allowing this to it's going to lead to something really, really bad down the road.
The problem, I think, is that the uneven enforcement by the Department of Player Safety prevents the NHL from policing itself. When the dirty hit doesn't get punished and the retaliation does, the retaliation costs, listen, $5,000 is stupid. Okay. Like you said, Trouba from New York makes $8.5 million. He swung his stick at somebody's head
and got $5,000
and got a $4,867.
He didn't even get a suspension.
And he wasn't suspended. Right. So the Department of Player Safety is hamstringing the ability of the players to police their own game when the retaliation is what ends up being punished. I've never spoke to Nick Cousins. I take Kevin Bieksa at his word when he said he's a good teammate and guys in the room like him. Kevin Bieksa has no reason to lie about that.
Yeah.
But on the ice, in the heat of the battle, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Right? And he's not a big guy. Right? So it's not like he's going to have to run into Desharnais or Ryan Reeves. I mean, none of the heavyweights are going to fight him because they don't punch down below their weight classes.
Well,
that's the code.
That's something that I think we would see the code broken if we're in a situation where in Toronto, Nick Cousins does some bullshit move like that to Mitchell Marner or William Nylander.
Or Austin Matthews, sure.
Yeah. Or anyone else, I think. Ryan Reeves, we got to know Ryan pretty well when he was here. And when he plays, there's no way Ryan Reeves is going to tolerate, regardless of whether it's punching down. I think what we see is, I mean, look, Goodbranson is a big fucking guy.
Yes.
Like, listen, I'm not saying I'd fight anybody in the NHL, but there's guys where you look at it and you're like, you know what? That guy, if I'm ever in a bar and a brawl breaks out, I want that guy on my side. And Eric Goodbranson is one of those guys where you look at him and you're like, he is a monster of a human being. And he had no problem taking his own action and disciplining Nick Cousins in his own way. Now, granted, he was the one who was on the other side of that bullshit hit.
And got suspended for it.
He did get, which is wrong. He shouldn't. Listen, if you're gonna, it's not like the NFL where it's live and maybe the referees miss a personal foul and they get the guy that they see. This is all on video. It's all available to review. So for them to not go back and say, you know what Goodbranson did was wrong, but Nick Cousins was the one who stirred the pot. He was the
Sure.
one who threw the magic mushrooms in the potion. We also need to discipline him.
I mean, it's a terrible precedent. I mean, we use Ryan Reeves as the example, and it's absolutely, I mean, it's perfect. The worst case scenario, the absolute worst case scenario for the NHL. Nick Cousins takes out Austin Matthews, and Ryan Reeves takes out Sasha Barkov.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at this point, the NHL has lost absolute credibility, and they've lost complete control of the game, and the players' ability to police their own game, as it's fucking out of here. It's absolutely done. So this whole thing, in my opinion, and yes, I think Nick Cousins is a dirty player and a piece of shit, and the fact that he doesn't stand up for himself like a man is a huge problem to me. But the bigger problem is the Department of Player Safety and their uneven handling and their complete lack of willingness to punish the first
Offender.
offense. Okay, so that's the rant. It was important. It's in the news, so we should talk about it. But the Golden Knights are 40 games into the season. 41's the halfway mark. That's the Colorado game Wednesday night. But because it's back-to-back and the Golden Knights are going to be on a pretty every other day compressed schedule until the All-Star game, Chap and I are going to talk about how the Golden Knights are doing at the halfway point. Normally in this episode, we would cheat and put up the first quarter grades and see if they're better or worse, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to talk about, in summation, how are the Golden Knights doing at the halfway pole of the 2023-2024 season. Chap, you lead the first topic of today's report card. Professor Chapman, tell me about the Golden Knights offense.
Well, I think what we can discuss is the last couple of nights, or the last, I shouldn't say nights, I mean, no pun intended. The last couple of games, I feel like it's been inconsistent, right? Like their offense, there's nights like the other night against the Islanders where they go out and score 5 goals, but then the previous 2 games, they scored 1 goal combined in the 2 games. So look, maybe some of that has to do with injuries. Obviously, missing Shea Theodore on the back end is I think starting to catch up with them in some ways. You're putting a lot of burden on some of your puck moving blue liners to create some offense and also play 30 minutes a night. So, I do think that maybe there should be a little bit of leeway here, but I don't think I'm going to do that. The inconsistency to me is a serious problem. One night scoring 1 goal, next night scoring 5, next night scoring 0. It can't be like that. So I'm going to give it a C right now. And I know they scored a ton of goals early in the year when they were loading up those points. And, you don't ignore that, right? We're going a full 40 games here. But Eddie, when I look at the first 40 games as a whole, the last half of those 40 games, the inconsistency has been pretty consistent, if anything. So I'm going to give it a solid C, maybe push it up to a C+, but I think overall, it needs to be better. They need to generate more offense, especially in a lot of in a different capacity.
I'm going to give it a B-. I'm going to give a little bit more credence to the injury factor, and I'm going to extrapolate the injury factor into line juggling. And listen, Alex Pietrangelo is a horse, but Alex Pietrangelo's he's being ridden a little bit too hard.
Yeah, I
He's
don't know if
playing
there's
too many
anyone.
minutes, and but just the fact that the D pairs are being juggled every single night, it seems like the injury bug is I don't want to say a pandemic because that'll scare people. The injury bug is in full effect, and I mean, just look at the lineup that they iced against the Islanders a couple of nights ago.
Yeah.
Tell me if you had Lucas Cormier on your bingo card
Well,
or
not only Lucas,
Tobias
yeah.
Bjornfot.
I mean, who he wasn't even on the freaking roster a week ago. So,
So,
I mean,
I
they're
mean,
now to their 11th defenseman of the season playing for them. I get that.
so I think that's significant. The kids have been contributing, but with key injuries, Shea Theodore, William Karlsson, now Will Carrier as well. He's forced to juggle the lines, and he's almost forced to make them top heavy to get some scoring, where he said he likes to have pairs, right?
Yeah.
So now I think I read this morning Carlson's going to be out maybe till the All-Star game. Chandler Stevenson is going to move up and center the line with Stone. So again, they have familiar. Listen, they're professional hockey players. They've played with each other off and on for years. But the fact that they have iced their A lineup, their preferred coming out of camp number one lineup, for one game of 40, I think it's significant. Yes, they're still toward the top of the league in scoring, but the inconsistency, I think, is a combination of injuries and everybody getting up to play them and them having a bunch of Tuesday night games where, frankly, they played like they didn't really give much of a fuck. So B- for me. Let's talk about defense, Professor Chapman. That's going to be a juicy one. What do you got?
Well, for the first quarter of the season, I gave it an A. This is a tough one because I don't know how many teams, and I asked Bruce about this the other night after the Islanders game, but I don't know how many teams in the league have the capability to get down to their 10th and 11th D-man on the season and still field a very competitive and good hockey team. The Golden Knights have played 40 games. They have had one game the entire season where they've had their, quote, A lineup out there. One game out of 40 where they've had every player that they penciled in to be one of their 20 guys or 18 skaters every night. They've had one game where those guys have been together. We've seen now Zach Whitecloud get injured for the second time, right? He missed the other night's game. We don't know the extent. We both noticed in the Florida game he got into it with I can't remember who it was, big Swedish guy. I think
77.
Yeah,
Miko something or other.
Yeah,
Miko
maybe
Mikola or something like
Mikola. That's the one. Finn, not Swedish. I think Mikola's Finnish. Sounds Finnish. But we saw him grab his elbow almost immediately after that, and he finished the game. He skated. And then Bruce just said that they didn't feel comfortable, I guess, with him. This isn't Bruce's quote, but the way I read it, they just weren't comfortable with him playing on Saturday night. We don't know how long he's going to be out. Obviously, Theodore, we know he's getting closer, but he's missed half the season. You've lost Caden Korzak, who was a replacement. You've lost Ben Hutton, who was a replacement.
For the replacement,
right? He was the seventh guy to start the season. You're now at a point where you're playing 21-year-old Lucas Cormier and Tobias Bjornfot, who was a LA King in Ontario not too long ago. So I think I'm going to give a little bit of probably a better grade than maybe some other people might. I'm going to give the defense a B, which is what I did for the first quarter, because I feel like given the cards that they've been dealt, I think they've done the best job that they possibly can. Now, could Alex Pietrangelo be better? Absolutely. But Alex Pietrangelo is playing with the handicap where he basically has to carry the load for the entire.
He is the load.
Yeah. Could Braden McNabb be better? Maybe. I mean, we've seen some really good things from Braden McNabb this year. He had a bad game against Florida, but everyone did. but him specifically being on the penalty kill, it doesn't look good. But he's been a stud all season. So individually, I think you've gotten some really good performances from guys, but I think given like I said, given the hand they've been dealt, I think they've done a pretty good job holding it together.
I think B is the right grade. It is, I mean, it's near impossible to fathom that they're 10 deep or 11 deep. Just like it was near impossible to fathom that they were 5 goalies deep in the first 25 games of season 1.
Yeah.
There is cohesiveness. And when you lose White Cloud, you lose Martinez for an extended period of time. You lose Shea Theodore for, like you said, half the year. They're okay playing with each other, but there's just not that groove when you know your third pair is White Cloud and Hay, and you
Yep.
know it's probably the best third pair maybe in the NHL. So they've been dealt an incredibly difficult hand when it especially comes to the defense, even worse than the forwards. And it is a testament to the system that they've been taught and that they played, that they're not getting their ass run out of the building every night.
Yeah,
And that
I
those
just want to go through this with you. So Braden McNabb has played 40 games. Alex Petrangelo has missed five
five.
games. Nick Hague has missed 8 games. Ben Hutton, who's a replacement guy, has missed 9 games or has only played in 31 games. Then you get down to where it really gets crazy. White Cloud, only 25 games played. Alec Martinez, 23 games played. Braden Pahal, 17. Korzak, 15. And Shea Theodore, I mean, you got to go down. He legitimately has missed half the season. He's only played in 20 games. So the injury bug is real, and it's not an excuse, but it is a reason.
I think that, hold on, somebody needs attention.
Uh-oh.
Like I said, I think B is fair. It's a little bit of grading on a curve, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to factor in all of the things that have made them what they are. But it's admirable that they're doing as well as they are when they could potentially be doing a lot worse. If they were not a disciplined team, I mean, they're still blocking a boatload of shots. I think they blocked 34 shots against the Kings
Yeah.
3 or 4 games ago, something like that. So I think it's admirable. I think B is fair, and I think that we both expect that grade will improve significantly if there comes a time where they're only missing one of their top 6D.
Yeah.
Fair?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Again, Lindsay, wish you were here because we have to talk about goaltending. It, God, it's really hard to sort of extrapolate what I think. So I'm going to say that it is C, maybe a little bit towards C minus. The bottom line is they started the season. Aiden Hill is number 1. Logan Thompson was number 2. They were definitely on a sort of 60-40 split, right? Logan Thompson was the 1A goaltender all the way through last year, got to the All-Star game, got hurt, still thinks that he's a number 1 goalie. He was forced into action when Aiden Hill got hurt and then got hurt again. But the bottom line is that Logan Thompson has been average at best since he took over the net. And I'm not going to get into the minutia of how his month was or anything else like that. But when the coach says we need to get the save, that's problematic. And there have not been many games where the Golden Knights have got the save, either to stay in the game, to keep a lead, or to prevent themselves from going down a goal. This last previous game against the Islanders was the first time since Logan Thompson took the net as the 1A goaltender that he made 2 really big saves. immediately after Vegas Golden Knights goals. He stopped a breakaway, and he stopped a couple of absolute just grade A chances that prevented the Islanders' comeback from continuing. They cut it to 4-2. He made a huge stop to prevent it from becoming a 1-goal game with 7 or 8 minutes to go in the third. But it was few and far between. He's not asked to do a ton. He's not asked to make 40 saves a night, but he, in my opinion, is really fighting it. Yuri Patera gets an incomplete. He was not the reason that they lost in Tampa in any way, shape, or form. But Logan Thompson needs to be better. And he is going to get pushed because, according to Bruce after the Islander game, he expects Aiden Hill to go one of these next 2 games versus Colorado Wednesday or Boston at home Thursday. If I was a gambling man, I would say he starts at home on Thursday. That would be my bet.
Yeah.
Home cooking, home crowd, stuff like that. But
I
all
also
in
think
all,
coming down from the altitude will be maybe you don't want to have him make his first start in Denver, a
right.
mile above sea level as well.
So I think all in all, the goaltending is a C, and it does need to improve. We hope that Aiden Hill is healthy and hits the ground running, and we hope that maybe Aiden Hill playing well will push Logan Thompson a little bit. But that right now is sort of their Achilles heel. So straight C for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a B minus. I do agree that Logan Thompson needs to be better. I think maybe Saturday was the best game we've seen him play this season. I thought he was really good. Neither goal, I think you can blame on him. But I think he would probably be the first one to tell you that he needs to be better. Bruce would tell you that he needs to be better. I think, like he said, there needs to come a point where one of these guys needs to make a save. And we got that the other night with Logan Thompson, where he stepped up and made a couple of big saves in that game. We need to see that consistently, right? Like that seems to be a theme here: consistency. With Yuri Patera, it's tough to tell because obviously he has a very small sample size, thrusted to a ridiculously difficult spot when Logan gets hurt. Playing in Florida, playing in Tampa, it was tough. By the time he came in the Carolina game, it was already over, so it didn't really matter what he did in that one. But when Aiden Hill has played, Aiden Hill has been Vezina caliber good. So I think that brings the grade up a little bit because we are grading them as a unit. I don't think Logan Thompson's been as bad as I think the fans, because I see a lot of the stuff on social media and, coming after the guy the way I see some of it, it's ridiculous because it's not his fault a lot of times. Like, yeah, he needs to make a big save, but you can't blame him for every goal that gets scored either. And it seems like it's a situation where I don't want to compare it to the Robin Leonard situation because that was very different, but I feel like the fans, when Fleury was traded, they treated Robin Leonard like shit. And it was uncalled for. I won't go down that road in another episode, another time, but I think there's a lot of unfair, harsh criticism on Logan Thompson. That being said, he does need to be a little bit better because he does need to steal wins for this team sometimes. And we haven't gotten that from him. But I think overall, I feel like the goalies have been, I'd say Logan Thompson has been average at best, when he's, but there's nights where Logan Thompson's good. So then you factor in the Aiden Hill. Like, I think he still has, I don't think he'd qualify because he hasn't
does.
played
He's played 12 games. He still qualifies. He's still the best save
goals
percentage and
against.
the best goals against.
Yeah. So you could make the case that when he's healthy, he's one of the best goalies in the entire NHL. So the numbers back that up. So I think when you add that in, I'm going to go with a B minus.
Special teams.
Yeah, this is a tough
Let
one.
this is a tough one. You want to go first or you want to go second?
Yeah, I could go first.
Go ahead.
I went with a B the last time. I'm going to go with a C plus here. I think there's nights where their special teams are really good, and then there's nights where their special teams, like the Florida game, which I feel was a bit of an outlier in the regards where you're not going to have very many nights where you give up 3 power play goals and you go 0 for 6 yourself on the advantage. Like, I feel like that's a one off kind of game. It counts, right? I mean, it was bad. We were there. We watched it. It was pretty bad. But that's not an every night thing where they're that bad on special teams. But there's nights where they're really good. I feel lately, and again, this may have something to do with the injuries, they haven't been great. They haven't. It could be tired legs, it could be the injuries catching up, but I think they're not terrible. They're improved from last year, but I think we need to see more. The comment that Bruce made after the Florida game was they went rogue. And I think there's been multiple times where he's kind of alluded to the fact that he wants the power play to be more shoot first. Don't look for the perfect play. Don't look to try to make the perfect pass. Put the shot on net. Maybe you give up a big rebound, or maybe you get a big rebound and you put the puck in the net. Paul Cotter has that mentality. Jonathan Marchessault has that mentality. We need to see more of that mentality and less of the I'm trying to put a guy in a perfect position to make the perfect play. I don't care. It doesn't matter if it's a perfect play or if it's a broken play. A goal counts the same. Just put the puck on net. And I think we'll see a much improved power play if we see more of that shoot first mentality.
I think that the thread that will sort of weave through this entire episode is consistency.
Right.
I mean, and consistency is caused by the injuries, and we've smashed that point into oblivion. But the problem with the power play is still the problem with the power play. And you watch the Islander game, and you have the exact definition of both. If you look at Dorofeyev's goal, it was a pretty tape to tape to Dorofeyev couldn't have missed it from 1 foot 6 inches,
Mm-hmm.
right? Absolutely couldn't. That's what the Golden Knights would like every single one of their power play goals to look like. On the other hand, you have Jack Eichel's absolute fucking snipe from the dot.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably what Bruce Cassidy
Wants to see.
would like to see a whole point. And they refuse they refuse to be a shoot first team on the power play. And they're easier to defend when you know that a bona fide superstar like Jack Eichel is pass first.
Mm-hmm.
When they go out there on the power play, if you're the opposite coach, you know the guy that's going to shoot every time he has the puck is Marchessault. You know the guy that's going to pass the puck, I think it's probably safe to say 80% of the time, is Jack Eichel and Mark Stone, right? They are pass first guys.
Yeah.
We sat with Jesse Granger of The Athletic for the Islander games, and they go, at what point are they just going to put Nick Hague on the power play and let him stand out there and just shoot fucking bombs?
Yeah.
Right? If it misses the net, it scares a defenseman because it's a missile flying by their head. If it hits a defenseman, you've got man down and you've got an effective 5.3. And every now and then it's going to score because it's an absolute missile from the point. It must frustrate Bruce to no end that he has legitimate scorers and they refuse to shoot the puck. And that seems to be something that they can't cure themselves. The penalty kill, I think that they've been victimized some. They have been inconsistent. They also have not had their same group of penalty killers for a bunch of games. And now with Carlson hurt, with Pietrangelo playing near 30 minutes a night, playing both sides of power play and penalty kill, they are struggling as a unit, and they've become vulnerable, where before they were pretty impenetrable. I don't think that it's necessarily something that can be remedied with a bunch of practice. I think it's more remedied that they need to get healthy. I mean, Keegan Colasar's been on the PK some this year. Jack is on the PK, both sides of the special teams this year. And they've been victimized. There's always bad bounces. That's part of it. But they aren't playing as cohesive as a unit, and they are inconsistent. So I'm going to say for the special teams, again, hamstrung by consistency and injuries, probably C plus, maybe B minus. It's hard because you know the potential's there because you've seen it be successful, right? You've seen them get hot, right? Bruce talked about, I think he wanted the puck moved less than 3 seconds. No extended dangling with your puck. If you watch the best power plays in the NHL, and I'll credit the mighty Detroit Red Wings as having one of those now, especially with Patty Kane on the wing. It's movement and moving the puck. Make the defenders not be able to stay in the box. Force them out of their comfort zone. And the Golden Knights power play is fairly stagnant when it comes to that. And I think that that's a problem, and they certainly have the talent to rectify it, but they seem really reticent to want to do anything about it. So I'm going to go with whatever the hell I just said, B minus, but it could easily be a C plus. Next up is the coaching. And this one is sort of subjective, I think. Coaches have to play the hands that they're dealt. I think that some people might have shown up in the Golden Knights dressing room that Bruce had to introduce himself to recently. Hi, I'm Bruce. And I don't think that there's anything really wrong with the coaching. I think that, Bruce gets on the riding crop when he needs to get on the riding crop. I think that, and I don't have anything to base it on, we're not in the room. I think he's probably perfectly consistent in his message, as are Dominic Ducharme and the other guys. I think the coaching is just fine. I think that it's, Bruce has said it numerous times. Hey, once they get on the ice, they got to execute. And the problem is that they haven't been executing. I don't think the problem in any way, shape, or form has to do with the coaching. So I'm sure that I gave it an A last time. So I'm just going to give it an A because I don't think anything's different. I think they're arguably the best staff in the NHL, and the players just need to play better.
Yeah, I'm not going to venture away from that either. I feel like Bruce he's done the job that he could do with what he's dealing with. I mean, listen, we've talked about it before. He doesn't have a fucking joystick. This isn't a video game. He can put the guys in position to succeed, but at the end of the day, the execution is on them. And we've seen instances where, like, perfect example, we'll go recency bias, the Islanders game. They focused a shitload on the forecheck on Friday at practice. What did the Golden Knights do unbelievably well against the Islanders on Saturday night? Their forecheck. They were able to create chances. They were able to score goals. And it's a case of, hey, wake up. I just woke my dog up. He was sleeping. But he's looking at me like, what the fuck you doing, man? You scared the shit out of me. But it's a case where he gets on them to do something, and they did it. They listen. And when they listen, they execute. Bruce is a damn good hockey coach, obviously. You don't last as long as he did in a city like Boston without being a really good head coach. He even mentioned it the other day. He spent a lot of time in the AHL, right? He coached in Providence for a long time. He understands dealing with AHL players and the mentality in the AHL as well. Look, he's done a good job. I don't think there's too much to criticize him on. I don't think there's too much to criticize any of the coaches on. It's an A. I mean, Bruce has done a really good job. Look, they're second in the division. They've dealt with a ton of fucking injuries, especially on the back end. I don't know. I don't know how you would criticize him. I don't know how you would look at him and say, "Oh, he hasn't done a good job," because he's done a good job.
Who is the MVP of the Golden Knights through 40 games?
Well, this should be a quick one. It's Jack Eichel.
There's no question.
Like,
And anybody that criticizes him or says different,
they don't
just
know
go
what they're
fuck
talking about.
yourself. Just
Yeah,
go
they don't know
fuck
what they're
yourself.
talking
You're an
about.
idiot,
Yeah,
right? He's tracking for
84 points, more than that actually.
more than that, closer to 90 now.
Yeah,
Right? He just concluded the longest game point streak in the pardon me, history of the franchise.
yeah.
He
He's an
plays on the
all-star.
peak. He's an all-star, plays on the PK, plays on the power play. You know, he is. Listen, Buffalo did pretty good in the trade when they got Tuck and Krebs and whatever, but don't get it twisted. The Golden Knights won that fucking trade, and it's the second horse in the race isn't even in the final turn yet.
Yeah, I
He is
mean,
a
look,
bona fide, legitimate NHL superstar.
yeah, he is, and I don't know if a lot of people would have put him there going into the season. You know, for whatever reason, they maybe don't like him. They didn't like the way things went down in Buffalo for whatever reason. Jack Eichel's a top 10 player in the NHL,
Bar none. Without
like,
yeah.
I mean, I feel like maybe you could make a case that there might be 10 guys better than him, but he's not far away from that. Like, I think he's a top 10 player.
I don't think that there's 10 better 200-foot players.
No. Oh, no, absolutely not.
I mean, let's divide that for a second. We've got a couple of minutes. I think Austin Matthews is probably a better offensive player than Jack Eichel,
but
I think Jack Eichel is probably a better 200-foot player than Austin Matthews.
he's a better, yeah, he's a better defensive forward. I mean, that's important, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I'm not going to award for that.
I'm not ringing the Selke bell or anything like that just yet. But Jack, listen, we've heaped and slurped the praise on him. They're getting every dollar that they invested in him. They're getting that back and spades, plus spades,
Yeah.
right? There's no question. And William Karlsson is a close second, or the next closest. You know, even with the injury, I think Karlsson is probably 2. And though he wouldn't be voted in, very justified to be in the All-Star game. He's exceeded. You know, he was tracking to score the second most goals since year 1. He's still a magnificent defensive and 200-foot hockey player. So to me, it's Eichel, and then, you know, Karlsson is 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would go Eichel and Pietrangelo. Like, I feel like Alex has really look, when you're getting 27, 28 minutes a night, he's playing half a fucking game, you know, and I know he doesn't have the fancy stats. He doesn't have a ton of goals, but what he's doing, I feel like without Alex Pietrangelo, the Golden Knights are a much worse hockey team.
And, they're dead. They're not worse.
Yeah,
they're dead.
I mean, I think Eichel's been the guy. I mean, I don't even think it's close. But I mean, Karlsson, Pietrangelo, I think you can make the case that both of those guys are there. I give the edge to Pietrangelo just because of what we've seen, what we're dealing with on the blue line. And sure, there's nights where I watch Pietrangelo and he fumbles the puck and I get frustrated. I'm like, come on, man, what are you doing? But there's a lot more good than there is bad when it comes to Alex Pietrangelo. And he's a guy who he always never passes the responsibility. He's a leader in the locker room. He's a leader on the ice. So, but getting back to Jack Eichel and the top 10, like, I'm with you. When you factor in, sure, there might be 10 guys who have more points. But when you talk about elite two-way forwards, Jack Eichel has to be in the conversation. Like, he's not Sasha Barkov, right? That guy, I think, is probably the best two-way forward in the league. But he's not that far off. He's not that far away. And the strides that Jack Eichel has made in that department tells me that he's not done growing as a hockey player.
No,
like,
not close.
we are just beginning to scratch the surface with how good of a hockey player Jack Eichel is. I mean, I know we're getting down the road, but Jack Eichel's starting to build himself a case to be a Hall of Fame hockey player if his career continues the way we're seeing it. I mean, he could be the first, and I know Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be a Hall of Famer, but when you look at guys who were basically Golden Knights, Jack Eichel is going to be there, I think, ahead of Marc-Andre Fleury. Not so much in the voting or the ballot, because obviously Fleury's going to retire. This might be his last year, and we're not too far down the road where he's going to get in. But I think Jack Eichel will be the first guy that you can point to and say he was a Golden Knight. He's a Hall of Famer, right? Like Marc-Andre Fleury built his career in Pittsburgh, and the Vegas was a good place for him to continue building that career.
And a great story.
Yeah, and people are going to look at Marc-Andre Fleury as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. When the day comes where he goes into the Hall of Fame, he's a Penguin.
He's wearing a Penguins cap.
Yes. Jack
For
Eichel,
sure.
if he continues the trajectory, is going to be a Hall of Fame player going in as a member of the Vegas Golden Knights.
Agreed 100%.
I think we're starting to see, look, Hall of Fame, like I said, I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit. The guy still has a lot of years of hockey left. But what he's doing is what you see Hall of Fame players doing. And like I said, we're only beginning to scratch the surface. I don't even think we've seen the best Jack Eichel, because I think once he starts to shoot more, he's going to become every bit as good of a goal scorer as maybe not Draisaitl and Matthews, but in that second tier, because I think he's right there now in the second tier of goal scorers, but we're going to see his name move more towards the top of that, where guys are saying, all right, well, Draisaitl, Matthews, McDavid, those are the elite goal scorers in the NHL. Who are the next guys? And I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to start to say, well, Jack Eichel.
Jack Eichel to me is the norm is going to be 40 and 100.
Yeah.
Really soon.
I think so. I think that's his
baseline.
I think that's what he's going to be.
Baseline. So that's it. We're wrapping up episode 66 of Hockey Nights in Vegas. Today
hit
is
the fucking subscribe button, people.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button. Today is Monday, January the 8th. I'm going to end with two notes. Do you have a prediction for the very big NCAA football Natty Championship game that kicks off in about 4 hours and 40 minutes?
Well, I know you're a Michigan guy, but I think Washington seems like a team of destiny. They've won a shitload of close games. I think Michael Penix is the best quarterback in college football. I think he probably should have won the Heisman. They went through a really, really tough schedule in the Pac-12, maybe the toughest schedule of any of the top teams in college football this year. They beat Oregon twice. I think Washington's going to win. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. In fact, I wouldn't feel comfortable betting Michigan laying the 4.5, because I think Washington's going to win. But I think if Michigan did win, it's probably by a field goal or less. I think it's going to be a really good game, maybe the best one of these we've seen in a while since we go back to the Clemson and Alabama game. I think it's going to be a good game. I think the Huskies are going to pull it out. I feel like Michael Penix is just going to find a way to get the job done.
And the score will be?
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Well, maybe not low-scoring, but I think it's going to be somewhere along the lines of like 23-21, something like that.
Well, there's no way in God's green earth that I'm going to pick Washington. That's the first thing. And I look to the great Charles Woodson, who was interviewed by our friend Brian Feldman, and asked him for a prediction, and Charles Wilson just simply said, "Come on, man," and walked out.
Yeah.
So
mic drop.
Yeah. So I am a Michigan man. Kelly McCrimmon is a Michigan man.
Brendan Brisson is a Michigan man.
Yeah. The Michigan Wolverines outmuscled a very big, strong Alabama team. And they won the game in the trenches and at the line of scrimmage. And they're going to win the game in the trenches again tonight. And they're going to win by a score of 31-24. So it's going to be a beautiful day. I will be wearing my Michigan versus everybody sweatshirt for the next episode 67 of Hockey Nights in Vegas. And I want to just put one more shameless plea out there. New Year's Eve, while walking into T-Mobile Park, that's what it's called, right? T-Mobile Park in Seattle.
Yep, Seattle, yep.
I ran into Paul Bissonnette of TNT, and I shamelessly asked him to join us on an episode. And Biz, you can cuss, you can have cocktails, you can talk about anything you want. There ain't no rules when it comes to doing an episode of Hockey Nights in Vegas. I'll even throw in a $1,000 bottle of tequila on your next trip to Las Vegas if you'll just come hang out with Chap and Lindsay and I for an hour on a future episode of Hockey Nights in Vegas. So that's my shameless beg moment. And that's going to Biz, come do an episode, brother. We need you.
I'm looking forward to who we may bump into in New York.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
Episode 66. Episode 66 is in the book. God, we went through the whole episode, and now we're just fucking stepping on each other. That's it. We're done. Thanks to Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com, your go-to website for all things Las Vegas. Websites. The website has everything. Strip club tips. I'll do that first this time. Entertainment, dining, shows. Anything you need to know about Vegas, you can find out at the Las Vegas Advisor. And by Dr. John Pierce at www.lasvegasadvisor.net. I forgot to give you the big reveal, so I'll save that for the next episode. And hopefully Dr. Pierce and I will be doing some commercials together. But I'm going to reveal for the first time publicly how absolutely fucking disgusting I was when I got on the scale, and the significant amount of weight loss that I have achieved over the last year and change. And it is legitimately all because of Dr. Pierce guiding me through my journey, because I'm embarrassed to tell the number, but for people who are considering it, I think it's important that you know what the number is and how bad off I really was and how unhealthy I really was. Now, don't get it twisted. I ain't all the way healthy yet, but when you know where I started and when I tell you the absolute truth of where I am, I think that you'll take stock in it. And if you need that kind of help, you'll consider talking to Dr. John Pierce, www.agelessforever.net. And we will be back probably next week when we get ready to cover the Avalanche, the Bruins, the Flames, the Penguins, and maybe the Rangers. I think
big week of hockey.
Big week of hockey here in VGK land. That's it. Lindsay, we miss you. Come back soon. We're out of here.